Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Tuesday, January the 13th, 2026. Hopefully, everybody's having a good week thus far. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Hopefully, we'll get through this show without too many problems. We've been having some issues with our connection of late here at my house. So now I guess even before the show here, I cut out for a moment. But hopefully it was just a temporary issue and it won't affect the show moving forward. So, as I said, we're just going to wait a few minutes, give people a chance to come in before we get started. If you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Alrighty then. So, anyways, let's see. So we're just waiting on people to show up here. Hmm. All right. Before we get started, let's see. 2 minutes. Let's see. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Alrighty then. So with that of course being said, let's see what's all right. So now we're coming up on 3 minutes. So I guess I'll start talking about what's on tap for tonight. So for tonight, um, we will be I have one article I'm going to go over from that Park Place. As some of you may have heard, Dilbert creator Scott Adams passed away, so we'll be looking at that article from that Park Place. Scott Adams, of course, known for creating the cartoon Dilbert, more of an adult animated cartoon, will gain some controversy back a few years ago, being kind of more of a Trump supporter. We'll look back on his life and his career. He also, of course, did some podcasting, um, among other things. Um, then from there, um, then of course from there we will also talk a bit about. From there, we will also after that we will of course get caught up on all the latest in. There's a reason to look back to last night's or yesterday's um, Monday Night Raw came from Dusseldorf, Germany, and then we will also be looking ahead to tonight's NXT. As tonight's NXT will be, and let me get this. I didn't even get this. I should have got this. So hey Rex, thanks for the like and share. Hey, first in. Yeah, you are first in there, Rex, even before the show started. So, anyways, of course, then we will get caught up on. Then we'll of course get caught up on. Then we'll get caught up on this day in each history as well at the end of the show. So without any further ado, why don't we go, as we just passed the 5-minute mark, why don't we go ahead and get started here? We will, as I said, look at the life and career, of course, of Scott Adams. So, Scott Adams, dead at 68, remembering the life, legacy, and creative genius of the Dilbert creator. Article published earlier today by Marvin Montanero. And this, of course, is on the That Park Place site. Let's go ahead and see what Martin had to say here in regards to the article. Well, of course, chime in. I do remember, even though I didn't myself watch it, I do remember that Dilbert did have his cartoon on back, I believe, in the 90s or the 2000s on UPN. So I know they did and it was basically a character that was maybe making fun of the workplace, of bad bosses and all that, kind of giving the rank and file a chance to laugh at their situation. So let's see what Martin has to say here on this. So the world has lost one of its most influential and unconventional creative voices. Scott Adams, the cartoonist behind the globally beloved comic strip Dilbert, has died at the age of 68 after a battle with aggressive prostate cancer. The news was confirmed Tuesday during a live stream of his YouTube show, Real Coffee with Scott Adams, by his ex-wife, Shelley Miles. For more than 3 decades, well, I guess when they say ex-wife, because of the fact she's a widow now, I guess. But anyways, for more than 3 decades, Scott Adams was a defining voice of modern workplace satire. Through the dry, often painfully accurate humor of Dilbert, Adams captured the absurdities of corporate life in a way that resonated with millions around the world. His death marks the end of a creative era that shaped how an entire generation laughed at office culture and in many cases survived it. A final message filled with gratitude. Here we go. We had some more. Yeah, metal. R.I.P. Scott. Yep. Bone. All right. And of course, guys, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions the best of my ability. So, anyways, back to the article, of course, here. A final message filled with gratitude. During the live stream announcing his passing, Miles read a final message written by Adams, offering one last glimpse into the mind and heart of the artist who had spent his life trying to be useful to others. There's Dilbert by Scott Adams. In that message, Adams reflected on his journey and expressed deep gratitude for the life he was given, writing that he had lived, quote, an amazing life, unquote, and given it everything he had. He urged people to, quote, be useful, unquote, and closed with the words, quote, please know I loved you all to the very end, unquote. It was a fitting farewell from a man who always believed the purpose of creativity was to serve others, to bring insight, laughter, and maybe even a little wisdom along the way. Yeah, I remember I saw Yellow Flash's video on Scott's passing earlier today as well. and he did talk about, like, I guess one of the back in there was some controversy about some comments he made back in 2023, and Yellow Flash had pointed out that he did it more sarcastically as a way to spark conversation, which I found somewhat interesting. That's always a good thing to do. Try to spark conversation, get people talking, get people's minds going and working a bit there. As we, of course, continue on with the article here. Scott Adams battled with cancer. In May of last year, Adams revealed that he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that had spread to his bones. He spoke openly about the illness on his show, choosing candor over silence, and continued working and communicating with his audience, even as his health declined. I know one of the other things that was mentioned, because Yellow Flash, when he was doing his video on it, had actually shown the entire message that Shelley had read on his show there, and he talked about how his body gave out before his mind did. So that was another kind of little tidbit. So, despite the gravity of his condition, Adams continued creating content, communicating with fans, and speaking openly about his health, maintaining the same direct, candid style that defined both his work and his personality. A cultural icon through Dilbert. Dilbert first debuted in 1989, so I was 13 going on 14 at that point. Was starting my freshman year of high school, I believe, that year, to go to show, and quickly became one of the most widely read comic strips in the world. By skewering incompetent managers, bureaucratic madness, and soul-crushing corporate culture, Scott Adams tapped into a shared experience that spanned industries, generations, and national borders. I mean, a lot of people work in offices, right? And seeing, interacting with your coworkers and some of the foibles that come out of that, right? For decades, the strip ran in hundreds of newspapers, became a daily ritual for office workers everywhere. Adams didn't just make people laugh, he made them feel seen. And, and it's kind of funny because we see that's Dilbert right there, right? He kind of looks like somebody who, unless somebody shouted his name or shouted his name in the rooftops or put him on a high pedestal, he doesn't look like somebody who would usually get noticed a whole lot. Just another drone in the crowd, right? Was never a fan of Dilbert, but massive respect to him all the same. Yeah. I mentioned too that I had never really. I remember that they did actually give him on like an animated series. I think back in the 90s or 2000s on UPN. Another one of those animated, adult animated comedy type shows. I do remember that. but I never really got into watching it either. But still, considering that he had a pretty interesting career there, nonetheless. So. For decades, the strip ran in hundreds of newspapers, becoming a. Oh yeah, we already saw that part. A shot from Dilbert by Scott Adams, YouTube Dilbert. Look at that! Look at the guy that Dilbert's looking at. He's like, ah. Later in life, Adams expanded beyond cartoons, becoming an author and commentator, writing books he believed could help people think more clearly and live more effectively. In his final message, he described this evolution, saying that he had shifted from focusing on being a good husband and parent to quote unquote donating. Interesting term he used there, donating himself to the world by writing books he believed were useful. A life that mattered. Let's see, a life that mattered. President Trump was among those who paid tribute to Adams following his death, calling him, quote, a fantastic guy who liked and respected me when it wasn't fashionable to do so. Mm-hmm. Unquote. And then they do show his truth here. And look at that. There's a picture of him standing next to, right behind Trump there. Trump is sitting in the In a longer statement, Trump added that Adams, quote, bravely fought a long battle against a terrible disease, unquote, and offered condolences to his family, friends, and listeners, saying he would be in, quote unquote, truly missed. There is no denying the cultural impact Scott Adams had. Few artists ever create something that becomes part of the daily lives of millions. Even fewer sustain that relevance for decades. Which is true. They were just saying that he had pretty much sustained that relevance for decades. I mean, office culture is something that office workplace culture is something that is a part of a lot of people's lives. So, just it makes perfect sense there. The end of an era, not a vanishing legacy. In 2023, Dilbert was dropped by most major newspapers following controversial remarks by Adams, leading to the loss of a large portion of his income and ending the strip's traditional distribution. Even that could not erase what he had already built. Now, I did allude to this earlier, and I know Flash talked about this earlier. He had mentioned in that those comments were meant to spark conversation, even though a lot of people didn't take it that way. Dilbert remains one of the most recognizable and influential comic strips of the modern era, a body of work that continues to circulate online, in books, and in collective memory of readers who saw their own cubicle lives reflected in its panels. In the end, Scott Adams lived exactly as he said he hoped to, creating, contributing, and trying to be useful right up until the very end. He leaves behind a legacy of laughter, sharp insight, and a reminder that sometimes the simplest drawings can tell the most powerful truths about the world we live in. So, anyways, with that, just let me just make, of course, one more little comment here, based, again, going back to what like from the cover from when I was watching Yellow Flash's video on it earlier. So as as with anybody who is or perceived as conservative, um, unfortunately, Scott got a lot of nasty hate online, from a lot of people on the left who basically celebrated his death. They made like a lot of snide comments celebrating that, oh, he died, and good, see him, Now, also, one of the other things that was also revealed, I guess, in his final message from his wife was that he wasn't necessarily a believer. He was not a Christian throughout his life. He was not a believer, but toward the end there, he did. At the very end there, he gave his life to Christ. So, even though one callous individual decided, oh yeah, I'll see you in hell, man. So, but obviously he had quite some influence there. So, let's see, and we're up to 22 minutes. So I think I have enough time to try to find one more article to go over, I guess. I don't think there were any here that I saw earlier. And again, as always, guys, if you haven't already, if you guys want to help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grab your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Well, actually, there does seem to be another interesting little article here. Yeah, let's look at this one here. All right, so this headline I kind of saw as I was looking. So, One Piece Season 2 trailer reveals another Netflix race swap. So, I'm guessing here they're talking about the live action series, obviously. So, January 13, 2026 by Trevor Denning. Let's see. Charinthra Chadron as Vivi in the One Piece Season 2 trailer, Netflix YouTube. So on Tuesday morning, Netflix released the trailer for the long-awaited second season of One Piece, a live-action adaptation of the long-running anime. The first season was one of 2023's biggest hits for the streamer, and fans have eagerly anticipated a second season. However, the decision to race swap the character of Vivi is causing some online controversy. One Piece's Vivi got Netflix, okay? Some feel that the casting is justified within the world of One Piece, while others argue it's yet another example of Netflix's push for diversity at the expense of remaining true to the source material. Well, I could in this is one of those times I could see both sides of it, because we have to remember Alabaster was more or less a desert nation, right? It was a desert kingdom. So it would be natural that in reality the characters would all be more or less kind of darker. You know, it's not like a racial thing. It's a geographic thing. So I think in this case, I think now why Oda? I believe Oda is the name of the guy who created One Piece. I hope I got that right. Why Oda decided to initially make Vivi white in that situation, I obviously couldn't tell you, but has been said, it's one of those things where it's under the casting is understandable in that regard, but it's not really like surprising, or shouldn't be quite taken quite as dramatically, because I don't necessarily think it's as much a race swap. I just think it's more of a geography issue. As I said, they're a desert kingdom, so naturally the people of that desert kingdom are going to be darker skinned because they're out in the sun more. So let's see what else they say here. So if the character of Vivi fails to land with fans, the fallout may be less a reflection of a culture war dispute and more an indication of brand damage. Oh, I think what they're saying here is because if fans perceive it to be a diversity push, then that could ultimately hurt the series more, because of the fact people just think that this, Netflix just going to be pushing diversity just to push diversity. Studio goals and fan expectations. The One Piece fan wiki describes Vivi as a young, fair-skinned woman of medium height with long, wavy, light blue hair, as a princess of the desert kingdom, Arabasta. We on the States have pronounced it Alabasta. It could be argued that logically she and her people should have a darker complexion, which point I made. However, when it comes to fantasy stories like One Piece, logic is sometimes secondary to the creator's vision and fan expectations. All right, that they make that's a reasonable argument right there. Again, what was the creator's? Why did the creator feel the need to make her a fair-skinned individual? Anyways, I'm going to go off camera here for a quick moment. I'll put some music on while I'm gone. And Metal, I don't know if you're still in here or within earshot of this, but feel free to chime in if you have anything to say on this, on what they're talking about here. Um, you know, that goes for everybody, though. Always feel free if something catches your attention to chime in on whatever we're talking about. So, anyway, Variety reported on August 23rd, 2024, that Charithra Chandran had been cast as Vivi in One Piece Season 2, and a year later, a teaser offered fans a brief glimpse of her in character. The latest trailer was the first good look at Vivi in action. Chandran is shown sporting Vivi's trademark blue locks, but she otherwise bears little resemblance to the character from the manga and anime. There's a shot of Vivi from the anime. Of course, when Funimation did the dub of One Piece, Caitlin Glass provided the English voice for Vivi in the series. So the British Indian actor had a small part in Eternals as a Bollywood dancer, though her breakout role was as Edwina Sharma in the second season of Bridgerton, also on Netflix. That show, an alternate history of Regency-era England, featured a race-swapped Queen Charlotte, played by Golda Rosheuvel. But that wasn't the first or only time Netflix was accused of making casting decisions based on diversity goals. Netflix's history of race swapping. The most infamous case of race swapping on Netflix was the 2023 docudrama Queen Cleopatra, which featured Adele James, who is biracial, as a Macedonian queen, a Macedonian Greek ruler of Egypt. Egyptian lawyer Mahmoud al-Samari filed a lawsuit in an attempt to have the streamer banned from the country. 2 years earlier, Jodie Turner-Smith portrayed Anne Boleyn in a miniseries. Vikings Valhalla altered historical European and Norse figures, with a historically white and male Norwegian ruler, Jarl Håkon, both race and gender swap for the show. Other Netflix projects not involving actual historical persons have also received pushback. The Witcher is based on a series of fantasy novels by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski, with most readers assuming the various characters look Eastern European. Casting director Sophie Holland said that Anya Charlotra, who is partially of Indian descent, was chosen to play Yennefer to, quote, challenge what people think of as beauty, unquote. Oh boy. that statement in and of itself can be quite damning right there. What potentially makes Chandran's casting as Vivi different is that Eiichiro Oda, the creator of One Piece, reportedly wanted her for the part in the live-action adaptation. Having the creator's blessing may help to smooth over any sense of betrayal. So basically, this scene. What they're saying is this was actually Oda's idea. So I guess now we do have kind of a idea what his thoughts on the matter were. A warning signal. The deciding factor will ultimately be if fans accept Chandran as Vivi. In One Piece Season 2, that may come down to how she does in the role. But the fact that, quote-unquote, Netflixed is becoming shorthand for, quote, race swapped, unquote, could be a signal that audiences expect the streamer turned studio to make diversity-based decisions that may not be the reputation Netflix wants going forward, and it risks eroding trust with fan communities that value fidelity to their favorite properties. Alrighty then. So, that's all we got for the stories tonight because we are at the 37-minute mark. And actually, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. So I will be right back. I'll put some music on, entertain you guys while I'm gone real quick, and then come back. We'll get into the wrestling wrap up. All right, so with that being said, let's, of course, now let's get ready to move on to the wrestling wrap up as we want to take a look back at last night or yesterday's Monday Night Raw, as it was taped in Germany, so the event itself actually happened our time yesterday afternoon, but but was eventually broadcast on in the States here later on in the evening. So yesterday's Monday Night Raw happened at the PSD Bank Dome in Dusseldorf, Germany, with Wade Barrett and Michael Cole on commentary. The show opened up with a little bit of a scrap between four of the women's tag. So as Rhea Ripley and Io Sky were celebrating their women's tag team title win from last week, they were confronted by they were eventually confronted by the Judgment Day duo of Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez and Bayley and Lyra Valkyria, both teams wanting a shot at the women's tag team championships, and then the former champs, the recently former champs of Kabuki Warriors of Asuka and Kairi Sane came out and went after the. So basically, it was a bit of a four-way going on right there, between four women tag teams, with the tag team champions basically clearing the ring. This little scrap would later set up a three-way number one contenders match to see who would next face the champions for the women's tag team championships, and we'll get to that in a moment. Then the first match of the evening saw Javon Evans take on Bravo Americano of the Americanos, with of course El Grande and Rayo in his corner and in Bravo's corner. Javon Evans would defeat Bravo in 6:15, getting his first win since being promoted to the Raw brand from NXT. Then we get into the aforementioned WWE Women's Tag Team title number one contendership triple threat match between the Judgment Day, Bayley and Lyra Valkyria, and the Kabuki Warriors, with the Judgment Day getting the victory after Liv Morgan executes an Oblivion on Kairi Sane to get the pinfall. Then in another tag team match, you saw Luchadors Dragon Lee and Penta team up to take on the Vision's Bronson Reed and Austin Theory, with of course Logan Paul and Paul Heyman in their corner, as Braun Breaker came out and started interfering in the match. Penta and Dragon Lee would actually get the victory via DQ, as Braun Breaker would start, basically going after he went after Dragon Lee, went after Penta, till Adam Pearce came out, and it actually led to Adam Pearce eventually laying his hands on Braun Breaker, only for Braun Breaker to reply in kind. This led to Braun Breaker's suspension by Pearce. And on a number of occasions, Paul Heyman and the rest of the Vision had to kind of separate the two to keep things from escalating too much. Even Paul Heyman had to remind Adam Pearce that Pearce was the one who actually laid his hands on Breaker first. So we'll see how all that kind of pans out. And then in the main event, saw Gunther defeat AJ Styles in exactly 18 minutes, as AJ had claimed that Gunther had tapped out to his calf slicer submission hold. Only the fact is that the ref did not see the tap. So and while and as the ref was telling him, the match is going on, I didn't see the tap. Gunther delivered a low blow to AJ Styles and then it hit him with a power bomb to get the 1-2-3. As WWE, of course, continuing their European tour, leading into Royal Rumble coming up in 2 weeks from this Saturday at in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. They continue to set. Now let's looking ahead to tonight's NXT. There's some major stuff going on NXT tonight. Of course, one of the big things people are looking forward to from the fallout is the announcement of what's going to happen with the NXT title. And Obafemi had vacated the title after successfully defending it against Leon Slater on last week's NXT. As it's believed that Obafemi may be getting called up to the main roster soon. People just aren't sure exactly where he's going to land as of yet. But coming from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, already signed for the night in a no DQ match, Joe Hendry will be taking on one of the members of the of Dark State, Dion Lennox. In a match for the WWE Speed title, Jasper Troy will be defending against Tavian Heights. Tavian Heights will, of course, have 3 minutes to try to wrest the title away from Jasper Troy. Channing Lorenzo with Ariana Grace in his corner defends the TNA International title against Shiloh Hill. Also, with the fact that TNA has Genesis coming up this Saturday, following of course the premiere, their AMC premiere, their premiere on the AMC network, Thursday Night Impact, and and at least slated for the main event here, in a women's match, Lola Vice will be taking on Kalani Jordan. So now we're all caught up on a lot of the wrestling news. So now what we'll do today is, of course, Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. So let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. History! So 10, 2021, and then 2001. All right. So first, I'm going to head back 25 years ago, as on this date, 25 years ago, back in 2001. Extreme Pro Wrestling, XPW, which is basically the West Coast version of ECW, but even more raunchier, as it was founded by porn producer Rob Black, his wife Lizzie Borden, and another guy, I don't remember who the other guy's name was, but founded XPW here in California back in 1999. This was their New Year's Revolution event coming up in 2001. And there were a few former ECW guys who, of course, were part of this promotion at the time. The main event saw Sabu, the late, great Sabu, retain the XPW World Heavyweight Championship over the Messiah. Now, the Messiah had gained some notoriety back around this time as well, as he had been a victim of a assault where somebody tried to actually it was a little later than this, after he left XPW, in which somebody had tried to emasculate him, as it were. So also, Tool defeated former ECW star Big Dick Dudley of the Dudley Boys. In a four-way dance, John Cronus, formerly one half of the Eliminators in ECW, 4-time ECW World Tag Team Champion, defeated Homeless Jimmy, Kikuzawa, and Nozawa in a 4-way dance. Dynamite D defeated Juventud Guerrera and Steve Rosano in a 3-way dance. In a 2-on-1 handicap match, the West Side Players of Jay Smooth and Tony Jones defeated Rocco Castano. Juventud Guerrera and Chaos faced each other to a no contest. And another 2-on-1 handicap match, Pogo the Clown defeated Angel and Crack. This event happened at Patriot Hall in Van Nuys, California. So now, in 2001 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. So also on this date in 2001, let's find it here. Premiering in Japanese theaters on this date in 2001, 25 years ago today, as part of the Initial D franchise. Studio Dean's Initial D Third Stage premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2001, 25 years ago today. Then we will move up to the year 2010 from here. So that's 16 years ago today. As soon as I clear this out, of course. And on this date in the year 2010, this date in the year 2010, the 885th issue of Action Comics went on sale on this date back in 2010. We had part 3 of the Divine Spark storyline, as written by this is a Superman story, as written by Greg Rutma and Eric Trotman, with Perry Perez doing the art, lettering done by Rob Lee, and Javier Mena Guerrero doing the coloring. And then the backup feature for this book was Chapter 7 of the Captain Atom story, as written by James Robinson, with art by Carlos Alberto Fernandez Urbano, Rob Lee doing the lettering, and the coloring done by Santiago Arcas. And, oops, I went too far there. Anyways, and now finally, moving ahead to the year, let me clear that out, of course. Moving ahead to the year, 2021, 5 years ago today. Big City Greens got renewed for a 3rd season as part of the Houghton Brothers' new overall deal with Disney Television Animation. So the Disney Television renewed the Houghton Brothers' Big City Greens on this date back in 2021, 5 years ago today. All right, so with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here with more Niche News tomorrow, of course, and don't forget this Sunday, I'll be joined by Rex Christian from Double Flight Momentum, Double Flyer Momentum, as we will we'll be looking back at comics that went on sale in July of 1940. I believe we'll be looking at comics that went on sale from Novelty Press, so most likely Target Comics, in that. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.